Hi there, Michelle here from Shell McQuay TV. We're helping you find ways to move from functioning to flourishing by putting the latest research to the real-world test. Today to help us, I'm very pleased to introduce you to my dear friend and colleague, Shannon Polly. Shannon's a fellow graduate of the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology program at the University of Pennsylvania. She's also completed the Georgetown U Leadership Coaching program. She has many publications and a wide range of leadership coaching experiences to her credit. She's described in the book we're talking about today, Character Strengths Matter, How to Live a Full Life, as a facilitator, speaker, coach and entrepreneur. One of the more unusual aspects of her background is that she studied theatre and classical acting at Yale and in London. She's dedicated to developing leaders by combining positive psychology with the art of theatre, and fittingly, the first article in this book is by Shannon and is entitled Acting as If. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Such a pleasure to always talk, and especially about this book, which anyone that hangs around me a little while knows that I'm passionate about strengths and how they might help us. But tell us, how did the book come about and why did you guys conclude that character strengths matter? Because you co-edited this with Catherine Britton, of course, who's another wonderful MAP graduate.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, I was going to mention Catherine. Well, the book came about in 2012 when our dear beloved professor, Christopher Peterson, passed away, and we wanted to find a way to honor him. And so we started a scholarship at the University of Pennsylvania in his name, and we felt like we wanted to do something else. So this idea had sort of been percolating in Catherine's mind for a while. She is the editor of Positive Psychology News Daily. She's curated over 1,100 articles on the site. Amazing. And she knows what's on the site, and she wanted to put together at least an article per strength so that we could highlight all of Chris's work and find a way to raise money for the scholarship. So it took us about 18 months. We pulled together the articles and then we commissioned some articles, and we wanted to structure it so that we could also have suggestions for how to build the strengths. So Tayyab Rashid, who's a brilliant colleague in Canada, generously donated some of his ideas about how to build the strengths. And then we added some pieces that we'll talk about a little later about how to embody the strengths. So that was how the book came about, and we're very excited that we've raised quite a bit of money for the scholarship, and we've already given 2 scholarships away. So it's very exciting.
Fantastic. That's a great outcome. So tell me, when you were gathering the articles for the book, were you finding some strengths harder to find research on than others? I know I often get asked in workshops, what am I going to do with humility? Or what do I do with prudence, for example?
That's a great question. There were definitely more articles around love and gratitude than around prudence and humility. Actually, Senya Maiman and Catherine Britton had already put together 2 whole books, one on gratitude and one on resilience. And what I remember is what Chris Peterson said to one of his students, who said, "But prudence isn't sexy." And he said, "What do you want to do for a living?" And she said, "Well, I want to be an accountant." And he said, "Well, for an accountant, prudence is pretty sexy." And I think of the story in the States when the airline pilot, the engines went out, he had a plane of almost 300 people, and he was able to land on the Hudson River and no one died. For me, that's a moment where prudence is a very sexy strength.
Yeah. And I know as you were gathering all these different articles and research on the strengths, you were also thinking through kind of what were easy ways for people to bring them to life. And I love that this book has a very different approach. While the science and evidence base is definitely under there, there's a lot of really practical guides for what you do with those 24 character strengths. So can you maybe share with us some of the highlights for you that really stood out about how do people use these strengths in order to get all those research benefits we've seen?
That's a great question. Well, for every strength, as I mentioned after the chapter on the strength, there are some ideas for how they can develop them. We also have a URL where you can go to see more, because we weren't able to print all of them. So it's bit.ly build via strengths /build via strengths. But for us, the angle on the book that we wanted to take was how you can perform the strengths, how you can act as if you have the strength. And my background in theater, from Yale to the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, is that when you act as if you have a strength, just like I knew from taking on a character role, you start to feel that strength. You start to realize it, embody it. And what was fascinating is that when I went to the social science literature, I found that there were psychologists and social scientists who had also discovered this with their clients. So Alfred Adler was a psychologist who actually, well, I don't know if he coined the phrase acting as if, but he has it in one of his pieces where he would tell a client who maybe had trouble being empathetic or had trouble acting with confidence. He would say, well, 3 times a day, why don't you act as if you were empathetic? And then he would find that these clients started to be able to embody it. And another social psychologist built on his work, Daryl Bem, who said that what happens is we actually observe ourselves. And when we are observing ourselves, we say, wow, Shannon was acting very empathetic today. I guess Shannon is empathetic. So it was fascinating to see something that I already knew from theater be researched and tested in the social sciences as well.
Do you think acting as if helps us change our stories? You know, often I think we tell ourselves those stories like, I'm not empathetic, or I'm not prudent, or I'm not creative is one I hear a lot in workshops. And then when we act as if, perhaps it helps us see that, oh, well, I can be, but it's just not now. So do you think it's part of that kind of self-efficacy shift that's going on with that, or something else that's creating those kind of outcomes?
I think that's a great way to put it, that it changes our story because we see ourselves in a different light. And there was a Russian psychologist, Lev Vygotsky, who termed it the zone of proximal development. So you're performing a head taller than you really are. And we allow children to do this. So when, my daughter said, Baba, I didn't say, come on, Quinn, get it right. It's bottle. I'm not giving you your milk. No, I said, she's brilliant. She said, Baba. She meant bottle, of course. But we stopped doing that with adults. We don't let them perform into who they can become. So I think it takes a bit of courage, a bit of bravery to try on something new. And it does absolutely change our story of ourselves.
So in the book, I know you've got all these beautiful pieces of poems and literature that can kind of help somebody act as if. Is that the intention, that when you read them, it might help you embody more of that character strength?
Absolutely. So we wanted to include poems, monologues, and speeches. And the monologues are obviously from plays, from certain characters that embody those strengths. The poems are from famous poets, and the speeches are from people in history. So we wanted a variety of people that you would recognize, Mother Teresa or Oprah Winfrey, and also some characters that you might have to dig a little deeper to discover. And, we read aloud to our children, but we stop after that. We stop after memorizing that poem in school. So the research on reading aloud shows it a lot of benefits. It's sharpening your focus. It increases your vocabulary. It helps you with your intonation, how you sound. So there are a whole host of benefits, but usually people have to get over the fear of looking silly first.
So speaking of getting over the fear of looking silly first, we were going to give a quick demonstration today. So do you want to do it, yes, or do you want me to do it? I don't mind.
It depends. How brave are you feeling today?
Well, I'm always feeling a little brave, but I also always feel incredibly spoiled whenever I get to hear you read anything aloud, because it reminds me of what a fabulous actress you are as well. So I'm kind of torn. So perhaps you could read for us today and give everybody else the treat that I've often enjoyed of watching you perform.
Very diplomatically put. Okay. This is the Farewell to Yankee speech by Lou Gehrig. And I wanted to read it because it's a powerful speech, but also because it just goes to show it doesn't matter what gender you are. You can read any of these speeches and feel affected by it. I have been in ballparks for 17 years and have never received anything but kindness and encouragement. Look at these grand men. Which of you wouldn't consider it the highlight of his career to associate with them, even for one day? When the New York Giants, a team you would give your right arm to beat, sends you a gift, that's something. When everybody down to the groundskeepers remembers you with trophies, that's something. When you have a father and a mother who work all their lives for your education, that's something. When you have a wife who has been a tower of strength and shown more courage than you dreamed existed, that's something. So I close in saying, I might have had a tough break, but today I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Goosebumps. Thank you so much. That was just beautiful. And you really get that sense of that embodiment of the strength, perhaps in a way that more generic descriptions don't quite bring to life for us. So Shannon, you've helped edit the book. You've got some scholarships up and going for others with it. What's next? What happens next with this beautiful piece of work?
That's a great question. We are talking to some publishers about the possibility of publishing it in some other languages, which will be very exciting. And we're working on publishing an audio version of the book because, as you know, especially these speeches, they're really meant to be read aloud, and we'd like for them to be heard as well. So those are two things we're working on right now.
Fantastic. And can you tell us again the bit.ly URL for people to go to if they're looking for more excerpts from the book?
Absolutely. It's bit.ly/build via strengths.
Fantastic. And you can buy the book on Amazon, Character Strengths Matter by Shannon Polly and Catherine Britton. I highly recommend the book. It's a wonderful example of just all the different ways these character strengths come to life, and also a beautiful tribute to our dear Professor Chris Peterson, who I'm sure would have just loved reading this book. Shannon, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. It's a true pleasure.
And thank you so much for watching. If you're looking for more of Shannon's wonderful work, head on over to shannonpolly.com, where you'll find lots of her research and resources to share. And if you're looking for other tested practical ways you can move from functioning to flourishing at work, be sure to stop by michellemcquaid.com, leave your name and email address so you can hear all our news first. Remember, you are good enough, so don't be afraid to let your strength shine. Until next time, take care.